Right, let's get to it then. This is probably the one aspect that people are listening to this podcast and absolutely desperate for updates on. Manchester United being up for sale. It's a long time since that emergency podcast, as we said at the top of this episode. You can go back and listen to that for the immediate reaction from Andy, Laurie and Carl on Manchester United being put up for sale in that statement that was released that night. Incredible 24 hours that for Manchester United. The dust has settled a little bit on the situation. Laurie, you put a piece up on The Athletic earlier entitled What We're Hearing About the Sale of Manchester United. Lots of brilliant detail in that, but what's the top line? What's the very latest on this, in your opinion?
Yeah, there's loads to it, and got to give props to colleagues that also helped with it. Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Dan Sheldon, Omar Garrick as well. So yeah, we kind of all pulled resources, and then I wrote it up yesterday with a little bit of a hangover from the Blossoms gig that I'd gone to on the Saturday night, which we also watched the England game from, which was quite a cool sort of vibe to it, given the stalls have like a kind of sloped aspect to them, so it's a bit like a football terrace watching it on the big screen. And then got over our woes with a bit of a gig afterwards from a quality band. But yeah, so I kind of pulled it all together yesterday, and the main line I felt was that this aspect that Rain, which are the group that are handling the sale talks, are committed to a sale in the first quarter. That's what their aim is of 2023. January to March, which is like quite quick in my sort of view. I was surprised when I heard
a full
that.
sale or investment.
That's what the aim is. So I suppose negotiations always start with your ideal prospect, and the ideal prospect for them or for the Glazers would be a full sale of £6 to £7 billion is what they're talking about. Now, obviously, that's a high price, way over market capitalisation, which is what the share price is currently at on the New York Stock Exchange, multiplied by the number of shares that there are. That's about 2.5 billion, something like that, 2.9 billion. small change, but yeah, the idea is that that's what they're aiming for. So that surprised me, and also you've seen different companies linked, and it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility that Rain would like to get a kind of auction going. They handled the Chelsea sale, and that was they benefited from that, in that you had quite a lot of interested parties all vying to put the right bid in, and then also with Chelsea it was also plans for the club as well. It wasn't just the highest bidder, but you kind of speak to people and you think that in this case it probably will be the highest bidder, because it's the Glazers we're talking about, and finance has always been the motivation for taking over the club. Now, is this the starting point for ultimately the Glazers really selling a minority stake that they then use to pay for the stadium? Because the stadium is the big kind of, mountain on, in the horizon, isn't it? Where it's this huge thing that has to happen, to any logical thinking mind, but it's going to cost an awful lot of money. And how does that, where does that come from? Because the Glazers certainly haven't got it. I mean, one staggering detail that I'll sort of reflect on now that came out from the quarterly results that were sort of released on Friday night, the full results. If you add up the gross debt with the credit facility, which United have dipped into again to buy players, which we wrote about in August, where they increased the budget, and we were saying, where's this money coming from? Well, now we know it's basically the credit card, the company credit card, and also instalments to go in future, because the net transfer debt, so the liabilities that they are open to over the course of the next few years is 250 million. So altogether, Manchester United's debt is, we think, £1 billion, possibly more. The fluctuations in dollar to pound conversion is can tweak that to sort of smaller degrees. But yeah, it's an incredible figure, and that's something that any future buyer will have to consider when they're making a proposal for Manchester United. Okay, we've got these liabilities to come in the future. So is the sale, and I'll wrap it up kind of, because there's loads to go at, but is this sale, this kind of idea that they're going to get a full sale, the starting point to actually selling a minority stake in the business? I mean, I spoke to a US lawyer who's kind of handled this kind of thing before, and I said, why would anybody pay money to not have control of Manchester United? And also to let the Glazers continue to run the club with your money, having shown no real ability to make it a successful sporting enterprise. They might argue, well, we've made it a successful financial one, but even that's under. You can dispute that at the moment because of the amount of debt that's going on and the fact that they couldn't even take dividends. I mean, this is a real major aspect of it. They actually stopped taking dividends, which I know there's been protests about, and we reported how the fan advisory board had held talks directly with Joel about the issue. So you have to kind of give credit to people for applying pressure, but I do think ultimately it's been a financial call that they looked at it and thought, well, we're actually making losses, so we can't justify taking dividends. So there's all these kind of aspects in my mind, and the people that we spoke to, they're thinking about these things. So it's a real long read. So you make yourself a brew if you're reading it.
Well, I needed a brew just for your answer, let alone reading the article.
I know, yeah. You could have come off at any point then, mate.
I decided not to because it was interesting, like you say. Carl, your face was a picture throughout most of that, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, forgive my naivete, but Laurie, when you say the debt is 1 billion, I'm going, who exactly is this 1 billion owed to? Is this lenders? Is this, a shadowy Scrooge McDuck type character?
Well, so they've got, so the gross debt is like £580 million. So that's what they, used to buy the club originally. So that's owed to banks in America. I think Bank of America is one of them. And they're long-term loans. It's like 20 years we're talking about. And the interest rate is finally a kind of manageable level. It was excruciating levels, I think 17% when they first took over with the PIC loans, which is kind of crazy that ever got allowed to happen, as Andy's reflected on numerous times. And then the credit facility is again with, different banks. So it's a revolving thing. So, I mean, in the accounts, it was revealed that to repay that, they took about $100 million, I think, for the latest tranche, for the latest signing. So basically, Anthony money, Casemiro money. This is what it's going to, and that will cost $102.9 million to pay back. So there's a bit of interest on that. I mean, that seems quite a good rate to me, 2.9%. But nevertheless, it's money that isn't actually theirs or the club's. Like it's crazy that you've got a club that generates 500-600 million pounds of revenue, and they can't actually pay for their own players because of the finance that United has taken to have the Glazers as owners, and then the transfer net debt is basically other clubs. So Ajax. I don't know the exact how that's broken down, but presumably the Anthony money is over 2, 3, 4 years. It certainly was the case with Bruno, wasn't it? I think there was an element of instalments there. Jadon Sancho's the one where there's definitely instalments to Borussia Dortmund. So it's those kind of things, and obviously United themselves will be owed money. I think the Romelu Lukaku deal to Inter was based on those terms. So there will be something coming back, but the overall difference, the net difference, is £250 million, something like that. So it all adds up to a hell lot of money.
Blimey.
It certainly does. There's lots of detail, like I said, in that piece, so you can go and have a read of that if you want to know more about the exact situation that Manchester United are in with this. Dan Sheldon's written a couple of handy pieces as well to explain how this is going to play out. The one big question, Andy, is who will buy Manchester United? Who is likely to even be in the offing for it?
It's discussed in the piece, and I think people really should read it. This type of journalism takes a huge amount of effort and research and getting people to speak. I think it's exactly what The Athletic should be doing and is doing, speaking to credible people, putting rumours to bed. Remember a few weeks ago, on the Tuesday, it was Apple are buying Man United, followed by a load of memes around about, it would be called I Trafford. And the next day it had moved on to the Ortega family in Spain who own Zara. And I just thought, there's something disingenuous about this. It's almost like names are being plucked, getting a load of hits for it, only for a day later or 2 days later for these huge companies to deny that there's been any interest in them. So I'd say read the piece, because it does talk about the type of people who can afford Manchester United, and there isn't a long queue of people who can afford it, especially given the reasons that you've explained, with the debt, with the stadium needing to be done, and also with the wealth of the competition now. This isn't 2004 anymore. The Manchester City's funding, PSG's funding, Newcastle United's funding. You need extremely deep pockets to go up against them, let alone go ahead of them, as Manchester United fans would be expecting. So it's going to run. I sense that there could be ruptures within United's fan base, because for some fans, it would be acceptable to have some form of sports washing as an owner because they just want to sign Mbappe tomorrow, now. And for others who will be saying, no, there's the social issues attached to this. And if it means, for example, the Glazers Mark II, someone else who's just going to load that onto Manchester United, that hardly fills me with joy either. It's a really interesting subject. I'd say read the piece for the detail in it.